Episode of the Osasu Show, let me use this opportunity to formally wish you a happy new year. Yes, we're in the third week of the year already, but I'm still allowed to do so. Today's program will be speaking to the chairman of INEC, the Independent National Electoral Commission, Mahmood Yakubu. He will be speaking to us about the plans, the guidelines of INEC, and his hopes and aspirations of the 2019 general elections. Don't go anywhere. It promises to be a very educative episode. Chairman of the Independent National Electoral Commission, Mahmood Yakubu, thank you so much for joining us in today's program.
Thank you.
How prepared is INEC for the 2019 general elections?
Well, thank you very much for that question. We are fully prepared for the election. We first and foremost deliberately planned the 2019 general elections, beginning with the election project plan, the strategic plan, and the strategic program of action. Next, we established the principle that going forward, elections in Nigeria should be held on the third Saturday of the month of February of the election year. That is for national elections, presidential and national assembly. And then 2 weeks later, the state elections, the governorship, the state assembly, and the area council elections where they coincide with the general elections. The area council elections take place in the Federal Capital Territory. It's the only part of the country where INEC conducts local government elections. So this will be held 2 weeks after the national elections. So in 2019, the first election, the national, will hold on Saturday, the 16th of February, and then 2 weeks later, the state and FCT area council elections will hold on the 2nd of March. And in the timetable and schedule of activities, we outlined 14 activities, beginning with the publication of notice for the 2019 general elections to election day proper. And so far, we have successfully implemented 10 out of the 14 activities on schedule. We have started tracking our processes and procedures using the Election Monitoring Support Center, and we are so far good to go. We are in the amber zone. We are not yet in the red zone. So for what we have done, we are happy so far. All the heavy items of procurement that we needed to procure before the elections or we needed to replace, we have done so. All the damaged and destroyed ballot boxes, over 62,000 of them, we have procured them. Additional ballot boxes for the presidential election, 200,000. We have procured and taken delivery. All the voting cubicles that we need to replace, we have done so. The smart card readers, we needed to replace 27,000 after the stress test on the smart card readers for the used in the 2015 general elections. We have replaced them. We are very comfortable with the arrangements we have made so far, including the enhancement of the smart card readers. We have changed the batteries, the SAM cards, the memory cards. We are good to go. The states are right now liaising with the National Youth Service Corps for the ad hoc staff to be used for the elections, and where there are shortfalls, the Commission has a very clear policy. Make up using students of federal tertiary institutions. Okay. Unless the number is exhausted and there is still a shortfall, we then go to the state tertiary institutions. And then the other categories of election duty officials will be drawn from senior academic staff from the universities who have over the years been serving as collation and returning officers for the elections. Of course, under the Constitution, the chairman INEC is the chief electoral commissioner of the Federation, a returning officer for the presidential election. So I will play that role, and it's a role I'm not going to share with any other person or authority.
Good. Given this level of preparedness you have expressed, is there any possibility of the postponement of the 2019 general elections?
I can't foresee any possibility of postponement. We've started this a long time ago. We have gone ahead with our preparations. There's no possibility of postponement.
Absolutely
INEC
not.
is not even contemplating the postponement of the 2019 general elections.
Okay.
16th of February is for the national elections, and the 2nd March for state elections and the FCT, and we're prepared.
Given the inconclusive elections in Osun State, a lot of voter apathy had increased because it was inconclusive. What is your response to that? How do we build the trust for INEC of the people, given the fact that they went out to exercise their universal suffrage, and at the end of the day, the elections were basically nullified?
Well, I wouldn't like to comment on the details of the Osun governorship election because it's sub judice. Under our jurisdiction, you don't comment on the merit of a matter that is before the courts. But let us look at voter turnout. The Osun governorship election was basically an off-season election. And all over the world, you don't have the kind of turnout you have in a general election when you hold off-season elections. Osun was in the first off-season election we conducted and was in the last. Even after Osun, we conducted by-elections in 4 more constituencies. Between 2015 and November last year, 2018, we conducted elections into 195 constituencies, the largest number of off-season elections. The turnout actually varied. The turnout varied from a little over 50%, I think, in Katsina, to as low as 2.9% in Ifakwe-Ijaiye in Lagos, and 3.4% at Itiosa state constituency by-election in Lagos. I think the thing to say about turnout is that because the elections in Nigeria have progressively and incrementally improved, there is no possibility now that you will have the kind of margins that we used to experience in our elections before the introduction of technology, basically the PVC and the smart card readers. The elections, in terms of the outcome of the elections and turnout of voters, is becoming more international. You can see that the outcome of the elections are becoming more and more competitive and closer to the kind of results we see even in advanced democracies. So we'll continue to do what we can to encourage voter turnout. Remember, we have a responsibility to do voter education and voter sensitization. But it is not the Commission's responsibility to do voter mobilization. There are agencies responsible for voter mobilization, like the National Orientation Agency, and also the political parties. But we'll continue to do what we can to educate and sensitize the voters as to the processes and procedures, what they do when they go to the polling units, how the processes will take place. And for that reason, I'm also happy to say we have concluded and we have published the guidelines for the 2019 general elections. Next, we'll use the manuals, next we'll use the guidelines to produce the manuals that we are going to use for the 2019 general elections.
And can we talk a little about those guidelines? A lot of Nigerians ask the basic questions, which I would ask you today. If you do not have a PVC, would you be allowed to vote if your name is on the list of registered voters at the polling unit? That's number one. Number two, in a case that the card reader fails, what are the next steps and procedures for a registered voter?
2 things, basically. One, you can't vote without the PVC, which meant that even if your name is on the register, there is no means of identification to know that you are the actual voter. And secondly, there is no way you can be accredited without the PVC. We can't accredit using the TVC, the temporary voter cards, because the machine can't read the TVC. Are there circumstances under which you can vote if your name is not on the register? No. The law is very clear that once your name is not on the voters register, you can't vote. What's the other question? And
in the case the card reader fails, what's the next step?
I need to explain and clarify this. What is the failure of the card reader? So we go back to the functions of the card reader. The card reader is supposed to perform the following functions: verify, confirm, and authenticate the voter on election day. The first thing the card reader does is to read the card. The card reader is not configured to read a clone card or card not issued by the commission. So the first thing is that the card reader confirms that the card is actually issued by the commission. The second step is the card reader confirms that the person who presents the PVC is the actual owner of the card.
Through the thumb
No, not
printing?
through that. There are details, personalized details, on the surface of the card, but the smart card reader reads the chip embedded inside the card.
Oh, I see.
So there's a handshake between the smart card reader and the PVC, and the details will pop up on the surface of the card reader. Your picture will show your personal details, including the voter identification number, your name, your date of birth, your gender. And these must compare favorably with the details on the manual register, which is also available at the polling units. But the card reader may confirm that the card is genuine, issued by INEC. The card reader may also confirm that they are the actual owner of the cards, in the sense that there is no mismatch between the details on the card reader and the details on the voter's register. But you know, two people may look alike. They may share the same name, and they may have proximate dates of birth. How then do you further confirm and authenticate that the actual person who presents the PVC that is read by the smart card reader and the details that are consistent with the details on the manual register is the actual owner of the card? Next, the smart card reader authenticates using the biometrics. And this is one thing that distinguishes you from any other person, is from our maker, is from God. So you now go to the stage of authentication. But if the card reader confirms that the card is genuine and you are the actual owner of the card, but for one reason or another cannot read the fingerprint, no voter is going to be disenfranchised for that reason.
Okay.
Because once the smart card reader reads the card, you are accredited.
So you have to pass 2 out of 3 steps of this process.
You have to pass all the 3 stages. But if you don't pass the 3rd stage, which actually is not, from the elections we have conducted, a really big issue. It's just a tiny minority that the machine is unable to read their fingerprints.
Because we saw the embarrassing case of the former president, Goodluck Jonathan, in 2015, when the card reader didn't authenticate him.
That's true. That's true. It happened to a respected former president. But you know, as far as the card reader is concerned, and as far as INEC is concerned, he's a registered voter. Yes, it happened, but he wasn't disenfranchised for that reason.
Okay.
His name being on the register and his card being genuinely issued by the commission. So that's why in 2015, the commission introduced the incidence form, where once the fingerprint is not authenticated, people can vote using the incidence form. But learning from the experience of 2015, we realized that the voter has no role in completing the incidence form. It's completed by official of the commission. And for that reason, we have now amended the register of voters for the 2019 general elections to provide 2 columns. There is a square box and there is a rectangular box. In the square box, the person whose fingerprint is not read by the smart card reader will have to thumbprint in that box, directly underneath the person's photograph on the manual register. And then the person must leave his or her mobile telephone number where available. The idea is that in the event of litigation, parties can subpoena the voters register and do a forensic audit to confirm whether it is one person thumbprinting or that is the actual person who turned up at the polling unit that thumbprints.
I see. Mr. Chairman, an infusion of technology into the electoral process is truly laudable. However, most Nigerians will consider a setback the rejection of the electoral amendment bill by the presidency. This was meant to see to electronic transmission of results from the polling unit. What's your response to that? Do you believe this is a setback for INEC?
2 things. First, the issue of assent to the bill or not assenting to the bill is a matter between the executive and the National Assembly.
You don't want to get involved.
INEC has no role in that at all. Simply because there is no legal lacuna the 2010 Electoral Act, as amended in 2015, still subsists. And so, as far as our preparations are concerned and the conduct of elections, we're not operating in a legal vacuum. Now, as for what should have followed thereafter, in terms of electronic transmission of results, I think there are stages, and we have been taking these stages progressively. Remember, until 2010, when the last commission introduced the full biometric register of voters, with every election, the commission undertook fresh registration of voters. But that's behind us now. With the introduction of the full biometric voter register, in which the commission captured all the 10 fingers of voters, we have a robust voters register that we only need to update and not to register voters afresh. And that's why in 2014, before the 2015 general elections, the commission updated the voters register. And between 27th of April 2017 and the 31st of March 2018, we also conducted a continuous voter registration exercise and further updated the register of voters, such that we now have 84,004,084 voters on the register, which makes it actually the largest database of citizens in Africa. We're very proud of that achievement. That is electronic. The next stage is to ensure that we electronically accredit voters. And that's why with the machine-readable, chip-based PVCs and the smart card readers, the commission is able now to do electronic accreditation of voters. The next step, naturally, will be how do you now vote electronically and transmit results electronically. We will get there. You know, there are 4 processes that have to coalesce in one for you to achieve that. If you look at where we were in 1999 or where we were before 2010 and where we are today, you will clearly say that INEC is the most improved public service institution in Nigeria. We are going to improve, but it's not going to be a sprint. You know, you start from the starting block, and in 10, 15 seconds, you are at the end of the race. It's going to be an evolutionary process. It's going to take time, but we are committed to deploying technology and deepening the processes of building public trust and public confidence in the electoral process. So you can see the progression.
I could definitely see that. I could definitely see that. Finally, Mr. Chairman, over 45% of registered voters are women. Why do you believe it's integral for women to participate in politics, given the fact, I must also commend you, that in every division in INEC, there's a gender desk. You obviously see the important role of women participating in politics. So can you explain to Nigerians why this is, and what dividends of democracy you believe that women would be able to prefer when they participate in the electoral process?
Well, I must say that INEC is an all-inclusive equal opportunities organization, and we'll be happy to see all marginalized and disadvantaged segments of society participate fully in the processes, not only on the basis of gender, but also disability and whatever disadvantage. So we'll be very happy to see women play increasingly important roles in the electoral process. If you look at the voters register, there are states where actually there are more female registrants than male registrants. If you look at the results from the 2015 general elections, which we analyzed, that is also the case. And if you look at the category of those who voted in 2015, I think in terms of gender, women have also played very important roles. Not only in terms of the numbers in some states of registrants, but also in terms of the number that actually went out on election day to vote. In some states, particularly Plateau, more women actually voted in 2015 than female. So next will be for the Commission to encourage political parties to continue to provide more opportunities for women, because under our laws, you can only contest an election where you are sponsored by a political party. We have no independent candidacy. And I'm happy to say that out of the 91 political parties, we have quite a number now chaired by women. And we have quite a number of female candidates for the presidential as well as National and State Assembly elections. And I think we also have quite a number of women as running mates to governorship candidates instead, and maybe 1 or 2 governorship candidates as women. I think over time this consciousness and awareness will increase, and it's going to be very, very good for our democracy.
Most definitely. Typically, women shy away from participating in politics due to the violence. What steps and what structures has INEC put in place to ensure that violence is curtailed during the 2019 general elections?
Well, this is a bigger issue, far beyond the control of the Commission. The first thing for us to do is to ensure that the processes are transparent and that elections are free and fair. But then there are other actors that play roles during elections. They also have to play their roles to safeguard the processes and to ensure that we have peaceful elections and peaceful and acceptable outcome. Here I'm referring to the political parties. I'm also referring to the security agencies. But in addition, there are others who play very important roles in mobilizing citizens for peaceful outcomes of elections. Civil society organizations, faith-based organizations, and people like you in the media as well. You have a role to play. So it is not just the responsibilities of the Commission, but also the responsibilities of other citizens as well. But from the Commission, we want to reassure Nigerians that we'll continue to do what is right within the confines of the law, our processes, guidelines, and regulations to ensure that the processes are transparent and the conduct of election also reflect our commitment to those processes. And
very, very lastly, Mr. Chairman, partnerships such as the one INEC has with the European Center for Electoral Support has seen to the increase of women in politics, has seen to sensitization and orientation carried out across the 6 geopolitical zones. What exactly do you intend to get out of partnerships like this in advancing our electoral process?
Well, the partnership that we hope to get is exactly what you have enumerated, but let me say even more. The partnership with the European Center for Electoral Support, with the EU, with other partners, has enabled not only greater participation and involvement of women in politics, but greater participation and involvement of persons with disabilities. It has also ensured greater participation and involvement of the youth. Recall that in each of the 6 geopolitical zones, we had campus outreach in which we essentially engaged with the youth. And this was done in partnership with the European Center for Electoral Support. And I'm happy to also say that the European ambassador was with us in virtually all the campus outreaches that we conducted. The good thing is that the 2019 general elections, as a result of that engagement and more, has become more or less the election of the youth. The vast majority of those who have registered are young persons between the ages of 18 and 35. But if you carry it forward to the age of 50, they constitute 80% of the registered voters. This is amazing. Wow. Unfortunately, I don't count among the middle-aged, but this partnership is going to continue, and we're going to deepen this partnership. You can see the progressive improvement in the participation of women, in participation of persons with disabilities, and in the participation of youth. And we'll continue to deepen our collaboration with the EU, ECES, and other partners.
Mr. Chairman, that's a fine place to leave it. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
That's it for today's program. You've heard the guidelines of how the 2019 elections will be conducted in just a few weeks. If you don't have your PVC, you cannot vote. If your name is not on the registered list of voters in that polling unit, you cannot vote. So please go out there and pick up your PVC before February 8th. Until next time, follow us on social media at The Osasu Show, at TOS TV Network, at Osasu Igbinedion on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. Don't forget to visit our website, tostvnetwork.com, for news on sustainable development and current affairs across Africa. I'll see you same time, same place next week. And until then, take very good care of yourself and get your PVC.